say the most dangerous force isn't the one that roars, it's the one that waits, watches, and strikes only when provoked. When the Los Jaguares cartel crossed into River's Edge, Texas, they thought they were dealing with an aging couple on a struggling farm. They couldn't have been more wrong. Richard and Mary Hamilton had spent decades guarding a secret, one that would turn this quiet border town into a brutal lesson in power, patience, and consequences. Their son wasn't just another soldier stationed overseas. He was Commander Christopher Hamilton, one of the most lethal Navy SEALs ever trained. And the cartel just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They threatened his family. Some say strength is measured by the weapons you carry. Others say true power lies in knowing exactly when to use them. Today, an overconfident cartel is about to learn both, by crossing paths with people they thought were harmless. They didn't pick a fight with farmers. They started a war with a family that knows exactly how to finish it. Before we continue, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And if this story hits home, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story, even more intense. Morning dew clung to the corn stalks as Richard Hamilton walked the irrigation lines. After 45 years of farming, he could feel when something was off. And today, something definitely was. The border had been too quiet lately, and Richard had learned that silence like that usually meant a storm was coming. Mary Hamilton stood on the porch, silver hair tied back in a neat braid, one hand resting near the satellite phone tucked into her apron, the secure line their son insisted they keep close. "Richard," she called out, "Sheriff Russell's pulling in." A trail of dust followed the sheriff's truck as it rolled up their private road. Mark Russell had been a family friend for over 3 decades, but today, that easy smile he always wore was gone. "Morning, Mark," Richard greeted him, noticing how the sheriff's hand hovered close to his holster. "Bit early for a visit." "Wish it was just a visit," Russell said, scanning the tree line. "We've had reports. Movement near the border. Not your typical smugglers. These guys look organized. Professional." Mary stepped outside with coffee, moving calmly, but her eyes sharp. "Los Jaguares?" she asked. Russell nodded. "Intel says they're pushing north, looking to set up new routes. And your farm makes a perfect corridor," Richard finished. "Clear sight lines, quick access to the highway, plenty of places to hide supplies." "You might want to stay with family for a bit," Russell offered carefully. Mary's laugh had more steel than he expected. "This is our home, Mark. We were here before you had that badge." "And our family," Richard added, "is exactly where he needs to be right now." 3 miles south, cartel leader Victor El Jaguar Delgado studied satellite images of the Hamilton farm. His lieutenant, Ramon Campos, pointed at a map. "2 elderly Americans," Ramon reported. "Their son's military, deployed overseas. Local police are spread thin. Response time? 15 minutes minimum." Delgado traced a route from their staging ground to the farm. "Our contact in Border Patrol confirmed. Special forces, but nothing we can't handle. By the time he hears anything, we'll already be dug in." Back at the farm, Mary checked supplies in the root cellar. Her hand brushed over a hidden compartment built years ago by Richard. Christopher had been clear. "One call, Mom. I don't care where I am. I'll come." Richard appeared, arms full of jars. "Mark's worried," he said. "Mark always worries," Mary replied, her fingers resting near the satellite phone. "But remember what Christopher said, sometimes the strongest move is to wait." Richard nodded. "Let them think they've got the upper hand." At the local diner, Rosa Valdez poured coffee for men she didn't recognize. Their boots were too clean, their questions too precise. As soon as they left, she called the sheriff. "They asked about the Hamiltons," she said. "Said they were looking to buy land, but they're Spanish? Definitely not local." Meanwhile, River's Edge felt the pressure shift. Dr. Emily Chen noticed unmarked trucks near her clinic. Deputy Collins picked up strange interference on his radio, and all the signs pointed in one direction: trouble. In his mobile command unit, Delgado gave the final order. "Tomorrow, by sunset, the Hamilton farm belongs to Los Jaguares. Make sure our friends in law enforcement get the message. And the old couple?" Ramon raised a brow. "What about them?" Delgado shrugged. "Offer them a chance to walk. If not, accidents happen on farms." As dusk painted their fields in gold, Richard and Mary sat on their porch swing, mugs in hand. A soft breeze rolled in, carrying dust from the south. "Should we call him?" Mary asked, watching the horizon. Richard stared at the faint trails of movement beyond the trees. "Not yet," he said. "Christopher taught us well. Gather intel first. Let 'em think we're just old farmers, too old to fight." Mary looked at him and nodded. "Then let's remind them what happens when you underestimate a Hamilton." His smile still held echoes of Vietnam, calm, steady, and far too stubborn to run. As night fell, more vehicles crept into the shadows beyond River's Edge. The cartel had no idea they were about to learn one of the costliest lessons in warfare. Appearances can be deadly deceptive, because sometimes the most dangerous force isn't the one that arrives with noise and firepower. It's the one that waits, silently building strength until the perfect moment to strike. The satellite phone in Mary's apron pocket stayed quiet. But not for long. Los Jaguares hadn't just miscalculated. They'd picked a target that could end their entire operation. Dawn broke over River's Edge in soft shades of amber, but that calm was just a mask. 4 black SUVs glided into town, their drivers moving with cold precision. They weren't hiding anymore. Their presence was a message. Inside the local diner, Rosa Valdez watched them from behind her counter. No weapons in sight, but the outline of shoulder holsters under expensive jackets told her everything she needed to know. "Coffee, gentlemen?" she asked, noting how they positioned themselves with perfect views of both exits. "We'll be here a while," the leader replied, his accent too refined to be local. "Waiting for some business partners at the Hamilton farm." Out on the fields, Richard stuck to his routine, but his tractor never strayed far from their storage barns. Mary worked her garden, her wide-brimmed hat hiding how intently she watched the road. "Movement in the South Grove," she said, like she was commenting on the weather. Richard adjusted his path. "How many?" 3. Definitely trained. Not their first surveillance op. The satellite phone weighed heavier in her pocket with every passing minute. But still, they waited. Christopher had drilled it into them. Gather intel first. Don't move until you know exactly what you're facing. Sheriff Russell's patrol car pulled up right on schedule. From a distance, it looked like a friendly visit. But behind the fence post, the conversation was different. "Got some polished visitors in town," he said. "Everything about their paperwork is too clean." 4 SUVs? Richard asked, killing the engine. "Saw them pass earlier. 12 men. "That's what they want us to count," Russell muttered. Mary brought out lemonade, slow and casual. But her voice sharpened. "And what don't they want us to see?" "Border sensors have been going dark, 1 grid at a time. Somebody's clearing a path. And it leads straight through your property." 3 miles south, in an abandoned ranch turned command center, Victor Delgado studied thermal imaging of the Hamilton farm. His methods were always the same: plan precisely, strike hard, overwhelm quickly. "They're consistent," Ramon reported, spreading surveillance photos. "Old man works till noon. Woman runs errands every other day. No guards, no cameras. No dogs." Delgado leaned closer. "The son? Still deployed. Our guy in the military says it's a black op overseas, nothing to worry about. Law enforcement? Sheriff swings by, but it's personal. They're old friends." Ramon's smile curled with quiet arrogance. "When we move, he'll understand why it's smarter to look the other way." Back in town, Dr. Emily Chen cleaned a cut on one of the newcomers. He claimed to be a real estate investor, but the way he carried himself, military posture, calloused hands, told a different story. "A lot of investors in town lately," she said lightly. After he left, she wrote everything down: height, scars, accent. Deputy Collins confirmed what they feared. More vehicles were gathering at the abandoned Carson Ranch. "They're not even pretending anymore," he told Russell. "Whatever's coming, it's happening soon." Inside the station's back room, the sheriff gathered his most trusted deputies. "I've called state police," he said, "but their tactical team's 3 hours away. By then, it might be too late." "We can still evacuate the Hamiltons," one deputy offered. "They won't go," Russell replied. And honestly, I think they know exactly how to handle this. Evening settled in over the farm like a second skin. Richard and Mary moved through their routine, checking irrigation, feeding chickens, locking up sheds. But every action was deliberate, every motion, part of a plan years in the making. "Storage barns are prepped," Richard reported as they sat for dinner. "Just like Christopher taught us," Mary said, placing pot roast on the table like it was just another peaceful night. Rosa called to check in. "Your visitors made quite an impression. Polite, too polite, the kind that hides threats behind smiles." At the cartel's base, Delgado reviewed the final phase of the plan. First team secures the perimeter at dawn. Second team approaches from the north, disguised as farm suppliers. By noon, we control every access point. By sunset, the Hamilton farm is ours. "And the old couple?" someone asked. "They'll get one offer," Delgado said coldly. "Sell or disappear. This territory is too valuable for sentiment." As darkness took hold, more cartel vehicles slipped into position under cover of night. They moved like professionals, quiet, calculated, deadly. Observation posts, comms checks, escape routes, all mapped, all rehearsed. But they missed one crucial detail. They thought they were setting a trap. In reality, they were already in one. In focusing so hard on the Hamiltons' apparent vulnerability, the cartel overlooked one simple truth. Sometimes the most dangerous people don't look dangerous at all. Inside their quiet farmhouse, Richard and Mary followed their evening routine. Calm on the outside, but both of them brushed past the satellite phone a little more often now. It hadn't rung yet, but they both felt it in the air. Something was coming. "They're getting bolder," Mary said softly, watching headlights drift along the southern fence. Richard calmly drew the curtains shut. "Let 'em," he said. "Christopher always said the most dangerous moment in any operation is when you think you've already won." Outside, Los Jaguares continued their tactical setup, unaware they were walking into a trap decades in the making. They thought they were confronting a frail old couple. Tomorrow would show them just how wrong they were. Putting this story together took time and passion. If you're feeling it, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep these stories alive. Now let's get back to River's Edge. Before sunrise, Los Jaguares made their move. 3 black SUVs pulled into the Hamiltons' gravel driveway, wheels crunching under the weight of arrogance. Leading the visit was none other than Victor Delgado himself. He believed in establishing dominance early. Richard was already outside, checking his weather station like he had every morning for 45 years. But this time his eyes scanned the SUV spacing, their tactical spread, their overlapping fields of fire. "Bit early for visitors," he called out, voice relaxed, steady. The kind of voice that makes men with guns think twice. Delgado stepped from the lead vehicle, designer suit sharp against the backdrop of dry farmland. 2 men flanked him, postures casual, but every move whispered military training. "Mr. Hamilton," Delgado said with a forced smile. "Apologies for the hour. Business rarely follows a schedule." Mary appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'll put on coffee," she offered. "That won't be necessary," Delgado replied coolly. "We won't take much of your time." He produced a folder of documents. "I represent a development group interested in acquiring land in this area. We're prepared to offer generously." Richard didn't even touch the papers. "Not interested in selling? You haven't heard the offer." "Don't need to," Richard said simply. "This land's not for sale." Delgado's jaw tensed, just a little. "Mr. Hamilton, the region's changing. Farms like yours, they're exposed. Equipment fails, fires happen. That a threat, son?" "Just business," Delgado replied, smiling again. "We prefer to make things easy, but make no mistake, we will acquire this property." Thousands of miles away, at a secure military base, Commander Christopher Hamilton was reviewing satellite movement near the Texas border. His team was prepping for a classified operation, but something about the activity near River's Edge stopped him cold. "Sir," Lieutenant Martinez approached. "Mission brief in 10. Christopher's eyes were locked on the screen. "Those vehicle patterns near River's Edge, Pull everything we've got on cartel ops in that sector, now. Back at the farm, Mary watched from the porch. She noted the cartel's vehicle placement, angled for quick exits. She caught the outline of body armor under expensive dress shirts, the radio earpieces disguised as hearing aids. "Coffee's getting cold," she called out, tone friendly, but her eyes hard as iron. Delgado turned to Richard. "Your wife's got a thing for manners." "You should worry more about safety," she shot back. "This is still America." Delgado's smirk didn't reach his eyes. "Rules change. By sunset tomorrow, this land will have new owners. The only question is whether it happens the easy way or the hard way." In town, Sheriff Russell watched more cartel SUVs arrive, each one confirming what he feared. These weren't gangsters. They were trained operators using cartel violence as camouflage. "They've set up checkpoints," Deputy Collins reported. "Look like routine stops, but they're locking down every road to the Hamiltons' place, at Dr. Chen's clinic." A surprise delivery arrived. Top-grade medical supplies and a sizable donation from an anonymous source. The message was clear. Be ready. Be discreet. Over at the diner, Rosa served coffee to another round of cartel men, no longer even pretending to hide. Their weapons were visible now, their voices louder. "Shame about that old farm," one said, grinning. "So many things can go wrong. Fuel leaks, equipment failures, fires." Back on the farm, Delgado made his final pitch. "Mr. Hamilton," he said, stepping forward, "think carefully. By this time tomorrow, Los Jaguares will control everything from here to the interstate. Cooperate now, and we'll make sure your retirement is comfortable." "And if we don't?" Richard asked, still calm. Delgado shrugged. "Then, as I said, accidents happen." "That they do," Richard replied, eyes steady. "Especially to people who don't understand what they've just stepped into." Mary's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Coffee's getting cold, gentlemen. You sure you won't stay?" Delgado studied both of them, Richard and Mary, looking for any trace of fear. He found none. 24 hours, Mr. Hamilton," he said coldly. "Choose wisely." As the cartel vehicles pulled away, Mary joined Richard in the yard. "They didn't see it," she said quietly. "Nope," Richard replied, too focused on showing power to realize what was right in front of them. He shook his head. Christopher would be disappointed in their tactical awareness. Back at the cartel's command post, Ramon flipped through surveillance footage. "Something feels off," he muttered. "They're too calm. They're just old farmers," Delgado waved it off. What could they possibly know about real power? But he was missing critical signs, like how Richard had positioned himself to view all their vehicle blind spots, or how Mary's slow, casual movements had recorded every weapon, every badge, every face. Most importantly, he'd missed the quiet hum of a satellite phone transmission, sending encrypted data across the world to a secure military base. Los Jaguares thought they were establishing dominance. In reality, they were documenting their own downfall. As daylight swept over River's Edge, cartel personnel tightened their grip with military efficiency, controlling intersections, watching movement, checking stores. Everything looked like a textbook operation. But they'd forgotten to ask one essential question. Why would a Navy SEAL commander set up military-grade satellite comms for his retired parents? The answer would cost them everything. By midday, the heat bore down on River's Edge as cartel men moved through the town, now fully revealed in their true roles. The masks were off. Businessmen became enforcers. Store owners were inspected. Traffic to the Hamilton property was slowed to a crawl, redirected, or cut off completely. In a war room thousands of miles away, Commander Christopher Hamilton studied every file his parents had transmitted: vehicle placements, movement patterns, blind spots, gear. "They're not cartel muscle," he said, voice tightening. "They're contractors, military trained." Lieutenant Martinez stepped in. "Local law enforcement confirms it. More cartel-affiliated units arriving every hour. They're forming a perimeter around your parents' farm." Christopher stared at the tactical display. What the cartel thought was a perfect encirclement. he saw something else entirely. They're using standard military protocols, Martinez noted. That's the problem, Christopher replied. It means they'll be predictable. Back on the farm, Richard moved his tractor across the fields like it was just another workday. But his irrigation lines were being adjusted with surgical precision, creating impassable muddy trenches where vehicles would get stuck. Mary hung laundry on the line, each shirt placed not for drying, but to obstruct the cartel's sight lines. Years of Christopher's training had taught them how to build defense into routine, how to hide intention in habit, how to prepare a battlefield without ever picking up a weapon. At the sheriff's office, Russell was under pressure. Another cartel security team showed up, all smiles and thinly veiled threats. "You've been selected," one of them said, "for a special security partnership. New gear, extra funding. All we ask for is cooperation, especially concerning the Hamilton property." Russell stayed neutral. "Smart man," the enforcer said. "Understands how to survive changing times." At her clinic, Dr. Emily Chen treated a teenager who had been roughed up, his only crime, speaking out against the cartel. His father, Jake Wilson, stood beside him, fists clenched. "They're taking everything," he said, voice shaking. "First the roads, now the town." "Patience," Dr. Chen said gently. "The strongest resistance doesn't always make the most noise." Meanwhile, Delgado reviewed live feeds of the Hamilton farm and felt uneasy. "They're too calm," he told Ramon. "No panic. No last-minute calls, no police, just routine." "Maybe they don't understand who they're up against." "No, something's wrong. Run their son's file again. I want every detail." "Still shows special forces, no unit details. Deployment classified." At the farm, Mary answered a call from Rosa at the diner. She nodded along while pretending to discuss a produce order. "They're locking down every major intersection," she told Richard. "Operators in cartel clothes. It's exactly the grid Christopher warned us about." Richard adjusted the farm's backup generator, then moved to the barn's mechanical systems. "They're building a containment net. Let's wait. Let them think they've got control." Mary's fingers hovered near the satellite phone. "Not yet," she whispered. "Let's see their full hand." At the base, Christopher finished his briefing. "Los Jaguares is using private military contractors to seize River's Edge. My parents' farm is their center point, perfect for supply routes, optics, and control." Chief Walsh stepped in. "They think your parents are just an obstacle." Christopher's jaw tightened. "They think they're going up against two elderly civilians. They have no idea they just started a war with the wrong family." Martinez pointed to the map. "Town's compromised. Law enforcement's pressured. Cartels controlling intersections and utilities, but they've made tactical errors. And they kept making them. More cartel units arrived. More roads shut down. More inspections. More fear. But one thing they hadn't noticed, the Hamiltons never blinked. At lunch, Richard and Mary sat at their kitchen table like it was any other day. "Barns are ready," Richard said calmly, buttering his sandwich. Mary nodded, eyes watching the SUVs beyond their property. "They're watching both access roads now, trying to look like traffic, but that's containment formation." Chapter 3 of Christopher's training. At Cartel HQ, Delgado's unease turned into obsession. "Show me everything we've got on their son again," he barked. Ramon pulled up the file. "Special Forces, deployment redacted. All records sealed." Delgado stared at the screen, and finally the realization began to form. This wasn't a simple land grab. This wasn't intimidation. This was a trap, and the Hamiltons were waiting for the right moment to spring it. Delgado stared at the intel file, fingers tapping. "Current mission classified, nothing unusual." He cut the analyst off. "That's exactly what's unusual. Too many missing pieces, too many layers of secrecy. We're missing something critical." By mid-afternoon, Los Jaguares had tightened their grip on River's Edge. More vehicles arrived, more checkpoints were set. From a distance, it looked like a flawless takeover, efficient, controlled, professional. But they'd overlooked key details. like how Richard's farm equipment, under the guise of routine fieldwork, had quietly carved out defensive terrain, or how Mary's garden tools were placed with surgical precision, within reach, within purpose, and most importantly, they never noticed the high-grade military surveillance system scattered across the property, buried in plain sight, quietly recording their every move. At his operations base, Commander Christopher Hamilton zipped up his tactical vest, eyes scanning the updated intel feed from River's Edge. "Time to remind them," he muttered, "why you don't mistake silence for weakness." As the sun began its descent behind the Texas hills, tension coiled tight around the town. The cartel's 24-hour deadline neared, but the Hamiltons hadn't budged. No panic, no calls for help, just quiet, steady preparation. Los Jaguares were about to pay for mistaking calm for surrender. Late afternoon brought the first real test of patience. 2 unmarked vans rolled up to the Hamiltons' north entrance, their drivers posing as feed suppliers. Richard met them at the gate, shotgun in hand, held low but unmistakably ready. "Don't recall ordering feed," he said, voice cutting clean across the dusty road. The lead driver, one of Delgado's more seasoned operatives, kept his tone smooth. "Complimentary delivery, sir. Part of our new regional agriculture partnership." Richard stepped to the side, eyeing both vans. "Don't remember signing up for any partnership." From the porch, Mary's voice rang out, laced with quiet steel. "Those vans are riding low, too low for feed trucks." The cartel men held their cover, but Richard caught the micro-tensions, subtle shifts in stance, controlled breathing. These weren't cartel thugs. They were trained. "Maybe we could step inside," the lead offered. "Review the partnership benefits." "Think we'll pass," Richard replied. "Roads are tricky out here, irrigation's shifting. Wouldn't want your trucks getting stuck." The message was clear. You're being watched, and you're not welcome. The vans backed off, but not before their drivers noticed something strange. Access roads that had subtly changed. Tight turns, mud traps, nowhere to maneuver, nowhere to run. In the cartel's mobile command post, Delgado paced. "They're preparing the ground." "Sir," Ramon looked up from the feed. "Simple farmers don't think in terms of terrain defense." Ramon zoomed in on surveillance stills. "Sir, look how the equipment is positioned. It's not random." "They're creating interlocking fields of fire," Delgado whispered. The realization hit hard. They've had military training. But how? At the forward base, Christopher reviewed real-time satellite data. "They just tested the north entrance," Martinez reported. "Your father turned them back, used the irrigation field as a blockade." Christopher allowed a small smile. "Dad always did like using the land itself as a weapon." In town, Sheriff Russell stood by the window, jaw clenched as more cartel SUVs moved in, their operators now making no effort to hide their tactical backgrounds. "They've set up a command post at the old Miller place," Deputy Collins said. "Full comms gear, surveillance uplinks. It's a pro setup." "And state-level help?" Russell asked, still claiming jurisdictional overlap. "Sir, we're on our own." Rosa's diner became a silent watchtower. Locals, farmers, mechanics, truckers watched cartel movement behind coffee cups and small talk. "They've got the main road covered," Jake Wilson muttered. "But they missed the old logging trail behind Peterson's." At her clinic, Dr. Chen treated another bruised teen, this one limping after an encounter with cartel enforcers. But there was something different this time. His injury wasn't just from a beating, it came after the cartel's SUV had gotten stuck in a freshly irrigated, newly muddy field. Back at the farm, Mary monitored the perimeter through a series of disguised cameras Christopher had installed long ago. "They're probing the south fence now," she said quietly. 3 of them, moving like operators. Richard made another adjustment to the barn machinery, letting the motor noise cover their conversation. "They're getting bolder," he muttered. "Won't be long before they try a real push." At Christopher's base, military surveillance intercepted the cartel's comms. "Encrypted channels," Martinez said, "but weak. We're inside." Christopher scanned the frequency logs. Military frequency use, predictable encryption, sloppy. In the cartel's command tent, Delgado's frustration turned to something sharper: fear. Every route we test, they've reshaped. Terrain works against us, equipment gets stuck. Access points bottleneck. He turned to Ramon. They've been preparing for this. All that fieldwork, those irrigation lines, it was defensive. We're not dealing with farmers, Delgado admitted. We're dealing with trained opposition. Ramon added quietly, and we've got another problem. He pulled up an image. Those satellite photos we've been using, they're being blocked. Military counter-surveillance just lit up over their property. Delgado narrowed his eyes. How? All we saw was old machinery. Look again, Ramon said, enhancing the footage. That equipment, some of it's not even connected. It's a cover. In a cargo bay aboard a C-17 transport, Christopher's team made final checks. Martinez reported, "Local resistance is rising, sir. Quiet but organized." Christopher zipped his gear and smiled faintly. That's Mom and Dad. They taught the town how to stand their ground without ever shouting. Back on the farm, the first real move began. A 6-man cartel strike team broke off from the south line, approaching on foot, tight formation, rifles tucked low, scanning with precision. They thought they were hunting civilians. They didn't know they were walking into a battlefield, one mapped out by farmers, engineered by a SEAL, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the cartel Los Jaguares launched a tactical operation to seize what they believed was a vulnerable farm owned by 2 elderly farmers, they walked into a trap years in the making. The Hamilton farm, with its odd irrigation, tool placement, and crop layouts, turned out to be a sophisticated defensive system designed by their son Christopher, a former SEAL Team 6 commander. As the cartel deployed military-grade teams, everything from fake thermal signals to terrain manipulation disrupted their tactics. What looked like coincidence was a well-crafted plan that flipped every one of their advantages. Thermal imaging was fooled, fallback routes were channeled, and equipment failed as intended. Christopher had trained his parents in advanced strategy and coordinated with the entire town. The diner was a spy hub, tractors blocked roads, deputies faked cooperation while quietly reporting everything. Meanwhile, cartel teams were herded, disoriented, and contained without a single fatality. But it wasn't just about defending a farm. When deeper intelligence was revealed, it turned out Los Jaguares was a front for illegal weapons testing and unauthorized military operations run by private contractors using small towns as cover. As Christopher's team exposed layers of corruption and gathered irrefutable evidence, the fake federal agents sent to clean up were also systematically outmaneuvered. Every move, every classified system they deployed was recorded and used as proof of their crimes. In the end, federal authorities arrived for real. Multiple congressional and military oversight committees got involved. The illegal program was fully exposed, and dozens of contractors and officials faced prosecution. The quiet town of River's Edge, once seen as an easy target, had turned into ground zero for exposing one of the largest unauthorized military operations in U.S. history, and all it took was threatening the wrong family.